If you'd seen us from the outside, you might have thought we were happy. That quiet kind of happy, the kind you don't write stories about. Not passionate, not dramatic, but steady. A man and a woman living in a white house with pale green shutters, a dog too old to bark, and Saturday mornings filled with the scent of burnt toast and too strong coffee. That was us. At least, that's what I let it become. Ethan was, the kind of man who felt everything. Loudly. If he was happy, the world knew. If he was angry, the walls would hear it first. He loved me like it hurt. Sometimes it did. Not physically. Never. But his emotions were so large, so overwhelming, that being with him sometimes felt like trying to drink from a fire hose. I used to love that about him. Back when I was 25 and thought that kind of intensity meant I mattered. Back when his eyes could still make me feel like I was the only woman on earth. But people change. Or maybe they settle. And love becomes routine. Routine becomes silence. Silence becomes a shadow that follows you from room to room, reminding you what once was. I don't even know when I stopped telling him things. Maybe it was after that promotion he didn't celebrate with me. Or maybe it was the 5th argument in 1 week over nothing at all. Or maybe it was just the slow erosion of connection, one indifferent glance at a time. He still kissed me goodnight. He still brought me tea when I was sick. He still said, "I love you," but it sounded like muscle memory. So when Nathan appeared, I didn't recognize what was happening at first. He was just a coworker. New to the firm. British, funny in that dry, razor-sharp way. He held the door, remembered how I took my coffee, made me laugh at meetings that usually made me want to cry. He didn't try to seduce me. He just saw me. And that was the beginning. I didn't plan it. God, if there's one thing I want to be clear about, it's that. I didn't wake up and decide to burn down my marriage. But one day, Nathan asked if I wanted to grab lunch, and I said yes. And that yes felt like the first decision I'd made for myself in a long, long time. We didn't touch. Not then. Not during the second lunch either. Or the third. But I remember when it changed. It was late. We had stayed behind after a client meeting to go over numbers. The office was nearly empty. He made some joke, and I laughed, really laughed, and he looked at me with this expression, not lustful, not even romantic. Just warm. He brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. I should have pulled away. I didn't. I went home that night and stood in the shower until the water went cold. I scrubbed my skin like I could erase what I'd felt. Ethan was already in bed when I stepped into the bedroom. He reached out, half asleep, touched my hip, murmured, "You okay?" And I lied. Yeah. Just tired. The worst part? He believed me. He always believed me. They say you don't remember every detail of your life, just the moments that change it. I remember the first time I kissed Nathan. It was raining. The kind of soft, misty rain that turns everything silver. We were leaving the office late again. He offered me a ride home. I should have said no. I knew what I was doing the moment I hesitated. But I said yes. I remember the feel of the leather seats in his car. The sound of the rain on the windshield. The way he didn't play music, like he wanted the silence to speak instead. We talked about nothing. About our boss. About a client with impossible expectations. About where we'd go if we could disappear for a week. I said the Amalfi Coast. He said Iceland. We laughed, like that difference meant something. He pulled up in front of my house. The porch light was on. Ethan always turned it on for me when I worked late. That small, automatic gesture should have grounded me. It should have reminded me of what I had. Instead, it made me feel like a stranger walking toward a home that wasn't mine anymore. I unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, hesitated. "Thanks for the ride," I said. He looked at me. Not hungrily. Not greedily. Just completely. You don't have to go, he said. That was all. I could have laughed. I could have shaken my head and walked away. I could have run into the house and curled up beside my husband and pretended like none of this had happened. Instead, I kissed him. Soft. Quick. My heart beat like a war drum in my chest. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't deepen it. He just looked at me like I'd handed him something fragile and burning, all at once. And then I left. I didn't sleep that night. Ethan noticed. He always noticed, just never enough to ask twice. You're restless, he mumbled at 2 a.m., still half asleep. I'm okay, I whispered. Another lie. But this one felt louder. This one echoed inside my bones. The next morning, I burned his toast. He smiled anyway, kissed me on the forehead, and said, I like it crispy. God, I hated him for that. For being kind. For being soft. For making it harder. I wasn't in love with Nathan. I need to say that now, so you understand, it wasn't about love. It was about being seen. It was about not having to shrink myself down just to keep the peace. With Nathan, I felt like a person again. With Ethan, I felt like an idea he once had that had stopped evolving years ago. You might think I'm just justifying. And maybe I am. But there's no clean version of this story. Only pieces of truth twisted up in guilt. The next time Nathan and I kissed, it wasn't raining. It was in his apartment. And it didn't stop at a kiss. I won't go into details, not because I want to protect anyone's innocence, but because what we did physically was never the most important part. It was the after that changed me. The silence. The wait. The absence of regret, and how that scared me more than anything. When I got home that night, Ethan was in the kitchen, holding his guitar. He was playing that song he wrote for me back when we were dating, the one he'd played on the night he proposed. Hey, he said, smiling. Haven't played this in years. I stood in the doorway and felt everything in me collapse inward. Because I knew, even then, that I had broken something that couldn't be unbroken. Not yet discovered. But already broken. There's a specific kind of silence that comes when you lie to someone who trusts you completely. It's not guilt. Not exactly. It's grief. Grief for a version of yourself you've already betrayed. I kept waiting for Ethan to ask. To confront me. To grab my wrists, look me in the eyes, and say, who is he? But he didn't. He asked other things. Softer things. You're working late again? You're not sleeping much lately. Is everything okay with us? And I answered, in order, yes. I'm just tired. Of course. He believed me. But something in his face changed every time. Something started to dim. He began cooking dinner more often. He brought flowers home, lilies, not roses, because I'd once said roses felt like clichés. He kissed me longer than usual, like he was trying to wake something inside me. And sometimes it worked. There were moments, brief, almost tender, when I thought maybe I could turn around. When I'd sit beside him on the couch, lean into his chest, and feel that warmth that used to mean home. But it didn't last. Because Nathan would text. Or smile at me across a conference table. Or touch my hand in a way that no one else would notice, but I would. And I would fall again. The first time I came home smelling like him, I noticed Ethan staring at me longer than usual. He didn't say anything. Just stood in the kitchen, wiping a plate with a towel long after it was dry. Then he asked, do you ever think we lost something? I blinked. What do you mean? He shrugged. Too casually. I don't know. Sometimes I think we forgot how to be us. Like we're just moving through the days on autopilot. I wanted to cry. I wanted to confess. I wanted to scream yes. But I smiled instead. Everyone gets into routines. He studied me, and I could see it, the flicker of doubt. Of fear. Of 1,000 things he didn't want to believe about the woman he married. But he didn't press. He never did. Not until it was too late. I started making excuses. Girls' nights. Extended meetings. Yoga classes I never went to. I created a version of my life that only I lived in. A dual existence. And through it all, Ethan kept loving me like I wasn't already half gone. Then, one night, the shift. I came home late. Too late. My lipstick was gone, but my mascara was smudged. Nathan's cologne clung to the fibers of my scarf. I'd tried to fix it in the car, rolling down windows, chewing gum, using perfume. But when I stepped inside, Ethan was standing in the hallway. Still. Quiet. Like a man holding something inside that was about to explode. You weren't at yoga, he said. I froze. What? You weren't at yoga, he repeated. I drove by the studio. I waited. I wanted to surprise you. My mouth went dry. We went out after. The girls. For wine. You weren't there either. His voice was low. Controlled. Too controlled. Ethan. He took a breath, then another. Tell me I'm wrong, he said, his voice cracking. Just tell me I'm crazy. That I'm being paranoid. That there isn't someone else. The room spun. I had rehearsed 1,000 versions of this moment in my head. All of them clever, quick, convincing. But in real life, I said nothing. Because in real life, his eyes were wet. His hands were trembling. His entire body looked like it was holding back a scream. Tell me, he said again, softer this time. Please. And I couldn't. Because lying in that moment would have been crueler than the truth. He closed his eyes. And then he broke. I'd never seen him cry like that. It wasn't just pain. It was rage. It was disbelief. It was the shattering of a world he'd built with bare hands and an open heart. He didn't scream. He roared. He knocked over the lamp. Slammed his fist into the wall. Punched the hallway mirror until glass rained to the floor like snow. I stood there, useless, frozen in the wreckage I'd caused. And he fell to his knees, breathless, as if someone had just ripped the air from his lungs. I loved you, he whispered. God, I loved you. He didn't sleep in our bed that night. I sat on the floor of the bathroom for hours after he collapsed in the hallway, my back against the cool tiles, my knees pulled to my chest. I heard him move once, just once, heavy footsteps down the stairs, the sound of a cabinet opening. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that clung to the air like smoke after a fire. I don't know if he drank. I think I hoped he did. Something to dull it, numb it, soften the sharp edges of what I'd done. But I knew Ethan. He wouldn't drink. He'd feel every ounce of it. He always did. The next morning, I woke to a note on the fridge. I'm staying at Charlie's for a few days. Don't call me. I need space. It wasn't written in anger. It was too neat for that. Too calm. That was worse. Because I knew Ethan, if he was still yelling, still breaking things, there would have been hope. Fire could be quenched. But this silence? This chill? This meant something deeper had fractured. I stood there, staring at the note, and I felt something twist inside me. Not regret. Not yet. Guilt, maybe. Confusion. Fear. The weight of everything I'd undone. Nathan texted that morning. Are you okay? Do you want to talk? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to. But because suddenly, everything about that other world, the secret world, felt like smoke in my lungs. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't asked me to lie. But still, being near him now felt like standing in the wreckage of something sacred. I spent the next 2 days in the house, wandering like a ghost. I kept expecting Ethan to come back. To storm in and demand answers. To throw his wedding ring at me or cry again or do something. But he didn't. On the 3rd day, I went to find him. He wasn't at Charlie's. He wasn't at work either. It took me hours to track him down, and when I did, he was sitting by the lake. The same lake where we'd had our first real date. Same bench. Same crooked tree overhead. He looked different. Not unshaven or messy, Ethan didn't unravel that way. But older. Worn. When he saw me, he didn't say anything. Just turned his face away and looked out at the water. I sat beside him. Not too close. I didn't deserve that yet. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, I said. I needed to see you. Still, nothing. So I told him the truth. About how it started. About why. About how it never meant I stopped loving him, but how maybe that was the problem. That I'd started to confuse love with duty, and I didn't know how to tell the difference anymore. He let me speak. And when I finished, he laughed. Not kindly. Not bitterly. Just, hollow. You think this is about meaning? He asked. You think it would have hurt less if it had meant something? He turned to me then. His eyes were rimmed red, but dry now. I would have rather you hated me. I would have rather you screamed and told me I ruined your life. That I made you feel small. That you wanted revenge. At least then it would make sense. I didn't have words. I just stared at him. You didn't cheat because you hated me, he said. You cheated because I became invisible to you. And that was the knife. Because it was true. Not deliberately. But slowly, gradually, he had become part of the background of my life. The safe place. The silent witness. The one I didn't have to try for anymore. You should have talked to me, he whispered. You should have told me you were slipping away. I wanted to say I didn't know how. But the truth was, I didn't want to. Not then. He stood up. I don't know what happens next, he said. But I need to not see your face for a while. I can't see your face and not see everything else. He walked away. No goodbye. No threat. Just footsteps. And I sat on that bench, in the place where we'd once started, and realized I might have just witnessed the end. Ethan didn't come home that week. He didn't come home the week after, either. And in that quiet, I started to realize what I'd really broken. It wasn't just the man. It wasn't just the marriage. It was the story we'd built, the version of us that we had shown the world, and the one I'd clung to even when I knew it wasn't whole anymore. He cut me out with surgical precision. No rage texts. No late-night phone calls. Just silence. Our mutual friends knew something had happened. They didn't know the details, not yet, but I could feel the shift in every message, every polite invitation I didn't get. Word spreads fast when something falls apart. Nathan kept reaching out. I'm here if you need anything. Please talk to me. You're not alone. But I didn't respond. Not because I was angry at him. But because looking at him felt like standing at the edge of a cliff I'd already fallen from. He wasn't the villain. But he was the door I opened when I should have been fighting to stay inside. One night, maybe 2 weeks after Ethan left, I walked through the house in the dark. I touched every object like it might remember him. His jacket still hung by the door. His toothbrush was still in the cup. The stupid mismatched socks he always wore still lived in the bottom drawer. I laid down in his t-shirt. Not because it smelled like him, it didn't anymore. I'd washed it out of habit. But because it was the closest I could get to pretending he was still here. And for the first time, I cried. Not the quiet, cinematic kind. Not the tears that fall gracefully down a cheek. I sobbed. Violently. Into a pillow. Into the empty space. Into the silence that refused to answer me back. I remembered the way he used to look at me in the mornings, with that dumb, sleepy grin like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I remembered the first time he said, "I love you," in the middle of a crowded street, no warning, like he couldn't hold it in. And I remembered the way he fell to his knees in the hallway that night. That's the image that haunted me most. You think, when you cheat, that you're only hurting someone a little. That if they don't find out, it won't matter. That if they do, well, people survive worse. But no one tells you what it feels like to watch someone's belief in you die in real time. I thought I was chasing a version of myself I'd lost. But what I really did was destroy the one person who had still believed I hadn't disappeared completely. Ethan had blocked me on social media. He'd even unsubscribed from the Spotify account we shared. It sounds stupid, but that broke me in a different way. Because it wasn't just rejection, it was deletion. He was wiping me from his life, pixel by pixel. I wanted to call him. I wanted to send 100 messages and beg for some kind of halfway point, even if it was just closure. But I respected his request. Or maybe I was just afraid of what he'd say if he answered. Maybe I knew he wouldn't answer at all. I started writing letters instead. On paper. In pen. Every night. I never sent them. I didn't even keep them. I'd write them, read them once, then tear them into pieces and flush them down the toilet like confessions too poisonous to keep. But in those letters, I was honest. About the emptiness. About the choices. About how I didn't know if I missed him, or the version of myself I used to be when I was loved by him. And still, somehow, I held on to the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done yet. But hope, I was learning, is not always a comfort. Sometimes, it's just the slowest way to drown. He showed up on a Thursday. No warning. No text. No footsteps leading up the driveway. Just the sound of a key turning in the front door, his key, and then the door opening like it used to, like nothing had changed, like he still belonged here. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a mug I hadn't sipped from in 10 minutes. When I heard it, I froze. And then I saw him. He hadn't shaved. His jaw was sharp, shadowed. His eyes were red around the edges, like he hadn't slept, or maybe like he'd cried and no longer cared who noticed. We looked at each other for a long, unbearable second. My heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to claw its way out. "Hey," I whispered, uselessly. He closed the door behind him, slowly. Then leaned against it. "I just came to get the rest of my things," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. It didn't belong to him. It was cold, clinical, like he'd borrowed someone else's mouth just to speak to me. "Oh," I managed. "Okay." He didn't move right away. Just stood there, taking in the space like it was the scene of a crime, which, in a way, it was. Finally, he pushed off the door and walked past me toward the hallway. He didn't ask for help. He didn't ask where I'd put his stuff. He remembered. Every drawer, every shelf, every corner of this life we'd built. I stayed in the kitchen, hands shaking, trying not to follow him like some desperate animal. But then he said it, loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. "Did you love him?" Silence. He stepped back into view, holding a duffel bag, eyes locked on mine. "I need to know," he said. "Did you love him?" My mouth opened. Closed. "I don't know." He laughed. Short. Bitter. "That's the worst answer you could have given." He dropped the bag at his feet and came closer. Not threatening. Not violent. Just, present. So vividly present I forgot how to breathe. "Did you ever think about what it would do to me?" he asked. "When you were sneaking around. Lying. Coming home and kissing me like it meant nothing." I didn't answer. Because what could I say? That I'd compartmentalized? That I thought maybe I was sparing him by keeping it secret? He didn't need my excuses. He needed blood. And maybe I owed him that. Did you imagine it? He went on, his voice rising now. Me finding out? Did you rehearse it in your head? How I'd react? Did you think I'd just leave quietly like some cliché husband in a sad movie? No, I whispered. No, I didn't. Well, he said, stepping back, then let me give you the ending you didn't write. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of papers. Thick. Crisp. Legal. I spoke to a lawyer, he said. 2, actually. And the mediator. My stomach turned. Divorce? He smiled. But there was no warmth in it. No. Not yet. I blinked. Then what is this? This is me taking control, he said. Of the house. The assets. The story. You want to cheat on me? Fine. But I won't let you rewrite me as the weak one. I'm not crawling out of this quietly, and I'm not letting you play the misunderstood victim. I swallowed hard. Ethan. I'm going to tell people, he said. Everyone. I'm going to tell your parents. Your coworkers. Your friends. I'm going to make sure no one ever looks at you the same way again. It hit me like a slap, not because he said it, but because he meant it. And still, part of me understood. You want to ruin me? I asked, quietly. He tilted his head. No. You already did that. I just want to make sure you know what it feels like. He turned away then, walked back down the hall, picked up the bag. I heard the door open. And for a second, I thought that was it, that he'd come, struck his blow, and left. But then he paused at the threshold. I used to dream about dying before you, he said, his voice soft again. Just so I'd never have to live in a world without you. And with that, he stepped out. The door shut behind him. And for the first time since the night he found out, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't grief anymore. This was war. People think that when someone leaves, it's over. It's not. It echoes. In habits. In rooms. In the way the air feels too still, like a question hanging midair that no one's brave enough to answer. Ethan was gone. This time for real. He didn't come back for more clothes. Didn't text. Didn't follow through on his threat to ruin me publicly, but maybe that was the worst part. He let the silence do it for him. Because when someone like Ethan disappears from your life, people notice. They start whispering. They start asking. And when you can't look them in the eye, they already know. My parents called. They'd heard from his mother. I lied, clumsily, said we were taking a break. Mom was quiet for a moment on the phone. Then she said, just tell me one thing. Did you love him? I didn't answer. She didn't ask again. Nathan faded out too, not out of cruelty, but because I think we both knew whatever we were, it couldn't survive sunlight. We were born in shadows. And shadows aren't made for staying. He sent one last message. I hope you find peace. I really do. I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. For weeks, the house was quiet. I moved through it like I was trespassing. I thought about selling it. Thought about repainting. Thought about torching the whole thing to the ground, just to see something respond to my pain. Instead, I let it sit. Let myself sit. In it. With it. With everything I'd been avoiding for years. What people don't tell you about betrayal, about being the one who betrays, is that the aftermath is a strange kind of emptiness. Not relief. Not sorrow. Just a vacuum. No one comforts you. No one tells you it'll be okay. Because you were the one who pulled the thread that unraveled the whole thing. And maybe that's fair. But it's also lonely in a way I wouldn't wish on anyone. One afternoon, months later, I saw Ethan. I was walking out of the bookstore. He was crossing the street, alone, carrying coffee. He looked lighter somehow. Not happy. But calmer. Like a man rebuilding something brick by brick. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and just chose not to look. I froze. Watched him walk. And for a moment, a brief, flickering moment, I wanted to run to him. To apologize again. To ask if there was anything left. But I didn't. Because I knew. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some versions of us have to die so others can finally breathe. And maybe that's what this story really is. Not a story about cheating. Not about endings. But about truth. Truth we ignore. Truth we live with. Truth we eventually have to face, no matter how much it burns. I loved Ethan. I destroyed him. And in doing so, I finally saw myself.